Okay, so as a reminder, the PowerPoint presentations that you'll be receiving or you'll be viewing, you'll be receiving after today's webinar. Okay, just to get started, I want to introduce you to the Small Business Development Center. The Small Business Development Center, we are a grant-funded program here to provide assistance to businesses through consulting services and, of course, our training webinars. We also have a lot of great tools and resources, and ultimately we're here to help you start your business, grow your business, and help you succeed as a business owner. We ultimately, our mission as well is to help you make better business decisions. Please know that our consulting services are provided at no cost. We also strive to provide those services in your neighborhood. So knowing which Sbdc covers your county is important, and we'll show that to you shortly. Our target client is someone looking to start a business or someone looking to grow their business. So we work with for-profit businesses. Again, our services are provided at no cost and they're confidential. We also utilize some of our grant funds to provide tools and resources, as I mentioned. More specifically, we buy databases that we access to provide you specific information to your business as it relates to industry research and market research. And then in addition, with the many years that we've been in business, we have a lot of tool templates, forms, and guides, and we're here to share everything and anything that we have. We're an open book. We just want to connect with you, so we'll be talking to you through our communication with how to become a client of the Sbdc if you aren't one yet. Okay, as I mentioned, the Small Business Development Center here in Pennsylvania, maybe I haven't mentioned that, but we're one of 15 centers in Pennsylvania, all located at institutions of higher education, and we are funded through the Small Business Administration and through DCED at a state level through the Partnership for Regional Economic Performance. So take a look at the map, find out what Sbdc covers your area, and please connect with us so we can help you. In addition, we also are the WEDNET partner. WEDNET stands for Workforce and Economic Development Network. It is a program that was created to help companies stay competitive by updating and improving their employee skills. This program provides funding to you for employee training, and you do have to be an eligible company. Your employee needs to be eligible as well as the training. So connect with us. And find out how the WEDNET program can help your business in keeping your employees' skill sets up to date. Okay, so here are our speakers, but I want to also mention that we are excited to be hosting today's webinar with OSHA and with the OSHA Consultation program. The PennWest, Clarion, Sbdc, and the Gannon University Small Business Development Center partner together with an alliance with OSHA to help bring these training webinars to you on a regular basis. So if there is a specific topic that you are looking for training on, please let us know. We always want to make sure that our trainings are all trainings that you are looking for. So let's get started. Mark Harmon is our first speaker. Mark is the Compliance Assistant Specialist with OSHA. He's been with OSHA for over 25 years. He spent the last 10 years as a Compliance Assistant Specialist, which is a non-enforcement position helping companies comply with OSHA regulations and providing outreach information to local stakeholders. The first 14 years, Mark worked for OSHA as a compliance safety and health officer, which is also known as a field inspector. He's completed over 600 inspections in manufacturing, construction, healthcare, and oil and gas. He has a master's degree from Marshall University in occupational safety and health. And prior to working for OSHA, he worked as an FAA licensed aircraft technician in Santa Barbara, California, after serving in the Air Force at Edwards Air Force Base. David Janaszak is with he's an outreach coordinator for the OSHA Consultation Program, which is located at IUP. Before joining the Safety Sciences Department and this program at IUP, he served as a senior health and safety professional for Curtis Wright Flow Control Corporation in Cheswick, Pennsylvania. This company was a supplier or is a supplier of U.S. naval nuclear propulsion and commercial nuclear power generation systems. While he was there, he was responsible for providing safety and health technical guidance to management leadership and overseeing the overall health and safety management systems at the Cheswick facility, along with other divisions located in Pennsylvania and New Jersey. Prior to his time with CWFC, David worked for a private consultation program providing safety and health assistance for many heavy manufacturing and construction companies. He's a professional member of the American Society of Safety Professionals. So great experts that we are excited to have here at our webinar today. So with that, I am going to stop sharing my screen and I'm going to pull up Mark's and hold on one second. And I will share my screen. And Mark, with that, I'm going to turn it over to you.
Thank you. Good morning, everyone, and welcome. This is the next episode of the OSHA topics that we had put on the calendar. And if you have been with us previously, the topics that we present here come from the audience. So I believe Cindy had mentioned, please, if you do have topic suggestions, by all means, submit those to us. And we would hope to get that information out to you at a future event, because here it is October. We are looking for topics for 2023. And again, it's been quite successful. I think over the years, we've done many of these outreach events. This, I believe, is the first time we have chosen the topic that we will do today. So again, questions are always what we look for. And with the virtual online media that we're using today, the chat window, I'm pointing here on my screen because I have it up. If you do have a question, or if you don't, I believe everyone is muted on their microphone, but if you'd like to type in a question on the chat, please do that, because I would try to answer your question, but if I can't, I will try to get information to you after the event today so that we can answer those questions. But again, this will be sort of a broad overview of the topic. Again, cranes, slings, and other lifting devices, I believe is what we narrowed it to. And with that, there's specific cranes that we will speak to. And I want to make sure that the audience understands the topic does not extend to what would be construction. So what we're talking about today is going to be under the OSHA General Industry 1910 standards. If we wanted to in the future, we could do a construction topic that would include cranes, but today we won't talk anything about cranes and the construction industry. So if you could, let's jump to the next slide. Oh, and the agenda, as I said, we will go through with the time that we have, information that would pertain to the 1910.179, which is entitled Overhead Cranes. We also will talk about slings, which is within the 1910 book as well, under 184. Other lifting devices, again, because it's such a broad topic, I know there are pieces of equipment, machinery out there that, again, may not be spelled out in a particular OSHA standard, but we would address those issues if it would to be something that would be considered a workplace hazard, an employee is exposed to it. So we have a few examples, and again, it would be something that perhaps would fall into the category of our general duty clause. which we'll try to again touch upon that if you're unfamiliar with that, what that what that is. The last thing we always try to leave you with are some links to the OSHA resources, and then that would, I believe, give Dave the opportunity to explain the services he provides at the consultation service. Let's go to the next one. The lesson overview, again, try to define it, would be to provide essential need-to-know information about the hazards associated with the overhead cranes in general industry. Again, general industry is not construction. So general industry would include what would be factories, manufacturing. Think of what could be a maintenance department at a location that say as a hospital. Okay, well, if they have a maintenance department, again, do they have an overhead crane um, that would meet the definitions under 179? That's what we're talking about today. The topics would include, again, how often they must be inspected, some of the common hazards associated, uh, including the slings and the chains and the wire ropes that would normally be used with this type of equipment. So again, to focus today, I hope with what you will leave here with is how important it is to inspect this type of equipment. If you're using it, I can assure you from an OSHA perspective, one of the things that we run into almost always is that a company will have this piece of equipment, but they may not be using it in such a way as to comply with the requirements of the inspection, the maintenance, the operational requirements of the equipment. I would put it into the category of people sometimes have the tendency to use something and then wait until it breaks and then they fix it. Okay. With a crane, I can tell you that is not how you want to use that piece of equipment. You should be thinking of the serviceability of the equipment long before it ever comes into question that it breaks down or that it fails simply because of the critical nature and the dangers that it would pose for someone using it, and it breaks, say, in the middle of a heavy lift, right? So let's go to the next slide. The OSHA standard, I typically want to outline when we have a topic. Again, if you've attended one of these in the past, whether it's lockout, tag out, or hazard communication, when we have a topic, I always want to point to the OSHA standard to give you some reference, because again, because of our time, we're not going to be able to go into detail each and every one of these paragraphs, but there's a link at the bottom, as you can see, that'll take you to the OSHA webpage that has the OSHA standard. And what are detailed here are the actual paragraphs of the 179 overhead and gantry crane standard. Again, paragraph A is definitions, B, general requirements, as you can read through particular components of the equipment. Let's go to the next slide. What we will focus on today is going to be mostly from paragraph J, which is the inspection requirements. And again, as I said, when you have inspection requirements, that means that you are maintaining the equipment in a serviceable condition, right? We don't want to treat it like we would, your car. I'll use that as my example. If you're just driving your car and waiting for it to break down, I can assure you it will break down at some point. But with a piece of equipment, in this case, a crane, where you are lifting things, which can be several tons depending upon the size capacity of the crane, you want to maintain the integrity and the serviceability of the equipment. So with that, the OSHA requirements are spelled out in paragraph J that talks about inspections. Paragraph L talks about maintenance. Again, maintenance would be the what could be done in-house. Your maintenance technicians, if they have experience, knowledge, and are capable of providing maintenance to your crane, by all means, they can do that. Sometimes companies will go outside, right? Get a vendor, a third party to do crane maintenance for them. We'll talk about the differences of the two. But as you can see, there are other paragraphs, rope inspections, how to handle the load. So the 179 standard, I would say, is a good standard. It may be dated a little bit, but the information in there is good in that you should be aware of what the requirements are, where to find particular information for your overhead cranes in your factories. So let's go to the next slide. The overhead crane is defined as a crane with a movable bridge carrying a movable or fixed hoisting mechanism and traveling on an overhead fixed runway structure. So again, when we say overhead crane, the pictures are depicting what we are talking about here. So again, if your company has a piece of equipment that would meet this definition, again, you could use it frequently. Could be something that you're using every day. Some people that have a crane in their company, it may be something that's not used quite often as you would imagine, but it is there and it is for use. So again, the requirements to maintain the equipment in a serviceable condition is important. We'll talk just briefly as we go through, what do I do if I have a crane? I'll give you an example. What if I have a crane at my company, but we only use it, once a month? Okay, that sure. There's many companies that have a crane that isn't used every day. It's only used sporadically. The truck comes in, it's got, whatever, something on it that we can only unload with the crane. Again, you want to ensure the safety of your workforce. So if they're using the equipment, we need to make sure that we are complying with the inspection requirements, the maintenance requirements, again, so that the equipment works according to what it's expected to be able to perform as it was intended when it was manufactured. Let's go to the next slide. Starting with an inspection. Believe it or not, the 179 standard talks about inspections. As I said in that paragraph J, you should understand that there are certain requirements that have to be done what we define as daily. So again, if you're using a crane, before you use it, you should go through an inspection process. Again, you will understand when I explain to you the various types of inspections. They're not all the same. Some are limited. Some are, quite comprehensive. But again, what we are wanting to ensure is that the equipment, the crane, is working as it should. So I always tell people, you can look at the OSHA standard. It does spell out in that paragraph J. If we had more time, I would pull that up on the screen. But paragraph J talks about, at a minimum, there should be two types of inspection categories. The first is a frequent, and the second is a periodic. So let's start with the one here that we have on the screen, which is said the pre-shift. Pre-shift means that, before you use this equipment, you should be looking at it to make sure that it is working as it should. Some of the bullet points there are talking about, right, the movements of the crane, whether it's the hoist, whether it's the trolley, whether it's the bridge, right? So the hoist is what's going to go up and down. The trolley is what is moving lateral. The bridge is what's moving through the shop area along the bridge beams. The limit switches, locking and safety devices. Limit switches, as they're defined, they limit the movement of the equipment. There's actually what's called a upper limit switch. If you're not familiar with your crane, this is something that is essential for safe operation. and it ensures that the crane will not, if you're running it up, you have an upper limit switch so that the hoist itself does not run into the reel where the wire cable is stored. So there's a mechanism. Sometimes they're electric, sometimes they're mechanical, but it's something that's called an upper limit switch, and that is a requirement that be tested daily, meaning that if you're using your crane every day, the pre-shift inspection protocol would say you should check those limit switches. And again, it's a safety feature on the crane. And I say that from experience. I had an inspection one time. I asked the operator if they had inspected the upper limit switch, and they assured me that they had. I asked him to demonstrate that, to show me that it was working. And long story short, yeah, he ran the hoist, the hook, up as far as it would go, and it did not shut off, right? Meaning that it ran into the hoist with the hook, ran into the reel, the trolley itself, and it actually damaged the piece of equipment. So again, these safety features are important, so as to protect the workers. Let's go to the next slide. So we talked a little bit about pre-shift. The visual inspection that would include, again, just going to give you some points here that, again, come from the OSHA standard. But I always pass along, I try to say, another good resource for any piece of equipment is always the manufacturer, right? If you've got a crane, a piece of equipment, who built or who manufactured this piece of equipment? You know, look for the maintenance manuals, look for the operations manual. They're going to have information in there that would be specific to your piece of equipment, which is important because again, you're trying to maintain the equipment in a serviceable condition. So just looking at some of the bullet points, right? You're looking for anything, any missing parts, any parts that may be loose or not attached properly. Check for the e-stops, the buttons. Understand where the location for the disconnect switch is. Believe it or not, a disconnect, an electric switch on the wall. You should know where that is. It should be identified so that if you were in need of turning off the power to the crane, you would know how to do that. Make sure that the wire rope is seated. Again, not getting too specific here, but the person who would be doing the inspection should have an understanding of what the ropes are. The running rope, as it is described, running meaning that it's moving. So it's the running rope is what's going up and down with the hook. What it runs on is a drum, right? There's shivs and pulleys. So you want to make sure that that rope itself is properly seated so that it doesn't have any slack. It's not riding up on the pulleys. So the wire rope size is important to look for during a visual inspection. Again, you're looking for any type of obvious defect. So look at the hook. You're looking for the pendant or the control. Are they properly marked? Do you know what button is for up, what button is for down? Let's go to the next slide. So the frequent inspection, again, the OSHA standard, if you look in 179 under paragraph J, it does define frequent inspection. Remember I said there's two categories. Frequent is the first category. A frequent inspection has a window, and the window is from daily to monthly. So again, I want to understand if you're using your crane every day, there is a requirement that you inspect it every day, right, before use. So the frequent inspection category is not as detailed as periodic, which we will see in the future slide. Periodic is a much larger, more comprehensive inspection. So the frequent inspection to me generally is done by the in-house employees. So the crane operator could be doing the frequent inspections. Again, if they have that capability and understanding, could be the maintenance department. Again, you're looking at what would be needed to ensure that the equipment is serviceable, right? Is it working as it should? So some of the things that you should be looking for are, again, adjustments of the mechanisms, deterioration or leaking, whether it's hydraulic or pneumatic parts, defects with the hook, which could include cracking, right? If you're really overloading the crane, which can happen, you can be causing the equipment to fail prematurely. So again, a frequent inspection is important. There should be a defined criteria of things that are looked at. Again, what I generally tell people is you should have some protocol to follow. There's a list on the OSHA standard under paragraph J, what that would include. And just to read some of them off, again, I don't want to run over with one slide with too much information, but under frequent inspection, it's talking about you are looking for deteriorated parts, whether that's including the chains, the hoist, the cables. You're looking for any functional operations that could have excessive wear. So if you have a lot of slack in your crane, and again, when I say that, think of like the braking mechanism. So you have a load on it and you're going up with the load and it goes up. And if you let off the up button, it should hold, right? You're holding the load now. Well, if the brake mechanism isn't working as it should, you may see that load start to fall a little bit, right? It's slipping. So that could be an indication that, hey, have we checked the brakes? There's something that is worn. We need to have maintenance look at this further, right? So you would write that up as a deficiency. Could take the equipment out of service if it is something that is, again, in need of attention. So a frequent inspection can be found in the OSHA book under the OSHA standard paragraph J of 179. But probably I would point to, the manufacturer, see what the crane manufacturer says as far as the regular scheduled upkeep, maintenance of the equipment. Let's go to the next slide. Frequent inspections. Yeah, as I said, you're checking for the hoist, the connections. You're looking for any distortion, any twisting. Again, sometimes you can, if you were to approach the crane, just in visual inspection, looking at the running rope, yeah, that's a wear item, right? You're gonna see that over time start to deteriorate. There's measurements that can be taken. Again, you are measuring the wear on the equipment, and like any piece of equipment that will degrade, is based upon, right, severity of use. Are you really working this crane, to its limit? That would cause it to wear out faster as opposed to it sitting for long periods of time and not being used. So again, it is so important to inspect your equipment to keep it in that serviceable condition. I can't stress that enough. Let's go to the next slide. Periodic inspections, again, are the two categories: frequent and periodic. Periodic inspections, defined in the OSHA book, are from monthly to annually. And again, people always ask, well, wait a minute, you're telling me that it's not specific. And I said, well, it doesn't say whether it has to be monthly or annually, but it says it must fall in, excuse me, it must fall into that time frame. So as I said before, if you are using the equipment, the crane, in a very limited capacity, your periodic inspection could be, again, on that much longer time frame. It could be an annual periodic inspection because, again, you're thinking that this equipment is not being used as often, as frequent, so it wouldn't be wearing itself out. But if you have a crane that's being used, 3 shifts every day, 6 days a week, round the clock, okay, your periodic inspection, again, as we have described, is a much more thorough, much more comprehensive inspection than what would be considered your frequent inspection. So your periodic inspection is the one, and again, I just used the example. Your periodic inspection is sometimes done by someone who is much more versed, whether experience, knowledge, capability in cranes themselves. Could be someone from the crane manufacturing company, could be a crane inspection company. So sometimes when we're in the factory or facility, yeah, if we see an outside company come in and I'm asking some questions like, hey, what are they working on today? It's not uncommon for them to say, well, they're doing the periodic inspection on the crane. And from that, I know that it's going to be the much more thorough, much more comprehensive inspection of the equipment, right? So with the periodic inspection, again, if you go back to the OSHA book under paragraph J, what it describes as the periodic inspection is everything that would be done in the frequent protocol, but then it adds to that even further inspection requirements, because at this point you are looking at the entire piece of equipment for its, serviceability. So, this is the one that you're crawling up on top of it. You're looking at all the moving parts to it. You take it apart to some extent. You're taking the covers off. You're looking inside it. You could be, looking at the shivs, the drums, the wire rope, all these components, the electrical connections on it, right? So again, you're giving it a much more thorough inspection so as to ensure that the equipment will last, right, until the next periodic inspection, which could be up to a year away before you would look at it again at this, to this extent. I've actually, when people, again, they try to ask questions like, you're telling me there's frequent, I understand that, but now you're telling me there's periodic. And I say, yeah, it's 2 different inspection requirements. You need to make sure that you are complying with both of those. The OSHA compliance officer would ask you that, I need to see the inspection records for crane, number 1. Always important, again, look at the OSHA book, the standard, paragraph J talks about inspections, but also look at, again, I've said before, the manufacturer of the equipment will give you a much more specific list of requirements for that piece of equipment. So let's go to the next one. Again, yeah, this is another slide. As I said, the annual inspections, again, for the periodic requirement shall be performed at a minimum once every 12 months. It says regardless of the severity of the crane usage. But as you can see in the picture, right, it looks like the crane inspector is up on a lift and he has what appears to be the cover maybe off the hoist itself, looking at, could be looking at the electronics, could be with respect to the button, the controls, whether if it's a pendant or it could be a remote control box. Again, you're wanting to make sure that all of that is working as it should. And again, it's like any other piece of equipment. It will over time wear to the point where, okay, the serviceable life of this particular component, I believe, it needs to be replaced. Okay, then let's fix that. So again, you're wanting to maintain the serviceability of the equipment so as to not allow it to fail, right? Break down before it needing maintenance. Let's go to the next slide. The written report. People ask this question, and it comes up quite often. If you look in the OSHA book, and I know I've said paragraph J, there is limited information about the written requirements, but I can assure you, you got to have something in writing so as to demonstrate or prove that you have done this inspection. Obviously, with the two different types, the frequent inspection could be smaller or less of a paperwork requirement. Could be, you could be signing off on a card, an inspection card, to whereas the one that was more comprehensive, the periodic, the one that can be done, once a year, that's probably going to be a much larger report, right? Because again, you're going to look for deficiencies and damages, and you need to be writing up things that, okay, we're going to repair the brakes because the brakes are worn beyond their limit. That needs to be, sort of described in the report that, yes, the brakes were switched out as part of the periodic inspection. They were deemed to be beyond serviceable limits. The written report should be kept on file. So again, because either it's, the OSHA compliance officer asking for it, it needs to be able to be produced. So again, the OSHA standard will describe what needs to be looked at along with the manufacturer's maintenance manual, operating manual. It will give you descriptions as to these inspection requirements, but for sure, make sure that you have something in writing so that you can produce that to show, to demonstrate that, hey, we have been maintaining this crane and here are the inspection records to prove it. Let's go to the next one. Maintenance. Let's talk again. We've mentioned a little bit. A preventative maintenance program based on the crane manufacturer's recommendations must be implemented. Any unsafe conditions that are detected during the required inspections must be corrected, right, prior to using the crane. It uses the word, it says only trained designated personnel shall perform the required maintenance and repair. Again, today we're talking about cranes that are used in factories. There is no certification, I won't say that's required in general industry. Once you get into the construction crane operations, there's much more crane requirements, whether it's the crane operator, the maintenance, the upkeep, but that's not what we're talking about today. Today, we're talking about the factory, the general industry, the 1910. We use words, and if you read the OSHA standard, it talks about designated. So it does say that the employer must designate someone to operate the crane. So that means that they have to be trained on how to use it. Same as with the maintenance personnel, right? We want to make sure that people that are doing the maintenance have an understanding of what they're doing, right? So I wouldn't say just any mechanic can work on a crane, right? I would say they need to have knowledge, experience, some technical level of competency to perform that type of work. The OSHA standards a little bit, again, it's not maybe as well written as it should be, but I guess I try to tell people, if your maintenance department in-house has knowledge and experience, and again, that could come from the maintenance manuals, right, the books, because again, we want to make sure that they're maintaining it according to what the manufacturer says, so that they are repairing it, that it would be serviceable, right? We don't want them to just put Band-Aids on everything, right? Like, all right, well, we'll put it back into service and it'll work until we can fix it. No, I would say, okay, who's the maintenance guy that did this? So again, it does mention the word designated. So if an OSHA compliance officer says, who's operating the crane, I want them to be able to say, well, this operator here, is a designated operator. Okay, who's the maintenance person? Okay, well, this person here is designated, right? We want them to be trained in order to maintain this equipment. So let's go to the next slide. Let's talk a little bit about moving the load. And again, if you go into the OSHA standard, there is a paragraph in there that talks about movement of using the crane. The first thing before you move it, you want to make sure that what it is that you're hooking up to, right, doesn't have any loose material parts, the packing, right? So whatever you can do to ensure that it is going to be a clean lift, that would be helpful. Make sure that there is no slack in any of the sling, the hoisting ropes before the lift, and make sure that the lifting device is seated in the saddle of the hook. So, right, if you can think of a hook, you want to make sure that when you set that in there, that it's at the bottom, it's there in the bottom of it. You don't want it just, hanging on the tip of the hook. There's, again, things that you should learn or know in crane operator training to ensure that they're doing it so as to not create a greater hazard or to get someone hurt. Let's go to the next slide. Avoid swinging the load. Let's talk, just briefly about this. And again, I always point to when you are using a crane and you're picking something up, it is important. It is important to make sure that you are centered directly above the load. We talk about don't side pull. And if you can see from the little illustration there, that means, right, that you're hooking up, you're hooking onto something, and instead of picking it up, you're actually you're side pulling it, you're dragging it. Okay, that's really bad. Because if you understand what the crane is doing, just the way the crane is built, a crane is built to pick, to do this. It's picking up the load. A crane has little to no capacity to do this. It's not built in such a way as to side pull. So, and I'm sure that's written in the the owner's manual. The manufacturer will tell you absolutely do not side pull, because what you're going to do, or what the danger is, right, that you're going to cause the crane to become unstable, right? It's all of the lift capacity of a crane is, straight down. So if it's a 10-ton crane, right? Any piece of equipment that's used for lifting, crane, it must have a capacity visually. You should be able to look at it and know quickly what it is capable of lifting. So if at any time, if you are not pulling from the vertical, you're side pulling, the crane has no rated capacity for that. So what you could end up doing, and what we've had accidents, investigations, is that, how did the crane collapse? And it was quickly determined, well, they were picking something up and it wasn't directly below the hook. It was, they were side pulling, and it literally, the crane it'll come off the bridge, it'll come off the rails, it'll, the trolley will snap, because again, all of the capability is in the vertical. Little to no capability in the horizontal. So always make sure that your crane operators are well aware of that. They should learn that in their training. But again, the other bullet point there at the bottom is another good one, because again, a crane has capability if it's used according to the manufacturer. And that last bullet point talks about, it says maintain 2 wraps of the cable on the drum. So again, if you can think of your running rope on your drum, you run your hook down to its lowest point, right, to the floor. You want to make sure that that drum that's up on the trolley, you want to make sure that that has at least 2 full wraps, so as to give it its lifting capability. And again, you'd have to look at it or understand the engineering. If it doesn't have 2 full wraps, what you can do, you can pull the rope out of the drum. Does that make sense? Think of the yo-yo. Does everybody ever have a yo-yo when they were a kid, right? You you break your strength when you get to the end of your 2 full wraps. Any crane manufacturer I've ever spoken to or read their paperwork, it says 2 full wraps on the cable, but you would measure that from when the hook is at its lowest point. That's another very good find from a compliance standpoint, that, hey, and how would you fix that? You would make sure that there's enough cable on the drum, right? So when they replace that cable, make sure that they're putting enough on it, so as to, if the hook is on the floor, you look up on the drum and there's still 2 full wraps on that, so as that it doesn't break. Let's go to the next slide. Yeah, operations. Again, load should never be carried over personnel. That's sort of an understood, right? That's a rule. Because again, the fear, or what could be a problem, if it falls, if it drops, if it, plunges to the ground, yeah, you would never want someone under it. It does talk about warning signal or horn sounded when we come near personnel, right? So if you're moving the load, say through the shop area, make sure people are, aware. Hey, we got something that's coming through. Again, this could be a huge piece of whatever, 10 tons. Okay, yeah, you don't want to be anywhere near underneath that, because again, say the load shifts, I don't know, the strap breaks, the wire rope, fails. So the operation, it says, another bullet point says, the load should never be left suspended. That's another good rule to follow. So when we say suspended, right, meaning that it's off the ground and it's hanging there, and I don't know what they went on break, they went to lunch. Okay, you should never leave the crane load suspended with nobody, attending to it, because again, that's just unsafe. So you would bring it to the ground or ground it, so that would not be something that would cause a problem. There are signals. If you looked in I believe it's in the appendix of 179, there are hand signals that can be used, which again, crane operators should be aware of. And again, it's something that you should be able to have your crane operators be knowledgeable in, understand that hand signals, because of the noise, right? If you can imagine, you're in a factory and it's just, so loud, you can't hear someone. when they're talking, but you would want to be able to still communicate with the crane operator. The crane operator could be up in the cab, right, many feet in the air, to whereas the person on the ground could be, giving them hand signals. There are hand signals that are standardized, which should be understood by your crane operators. Let's go to the next slide. Leaving an overhead crane. Okay, yeah, it talks about, again, back to what we talked about, the controls being unattended. That's always bad. It says if you do leave the controls, you should always lower the load. Again, it leaves familiarize yourself with the location of the disconnect. Again, that would be in the case of an emergency. You would want to be able to turn it off, turn the power off. Generally, what we see is, the disconnect is usually within eyesight or a distance in the same bay as to where the crane is located. But again, with electrical equipment like that, always, labels are very important. Crane disconnect. Make sure that it's not no clutter. Make sure that stuff is not, set in front of it where you could not get to it if you need to. Let's go to the next one. Unsaved cranes, it does say, right, if you do find defects or deficiencies in your crane, yeah, take it out of service. It does mention in the OSHA standard, talks about, taking a crane out of service. So again, disconnect the power, lock it out, right? So you're putting a lockout device on it, but it does even mention, goes so far, that you should be labeling on it, right? It says out of service or out of order. So that there would be no misunderstanding as to, hey, this crane is not serviceable. So until we can get it fixed, taking it out of service, don't use it. I know we've had incidents where, the first shift had a problem with the crane. They took it out of service, and for whatever reason that wasn't communicated. The second shift guys came in, they, started using it. Next thing you know, bang, something breaks, somebody gets hurt. So unsafe overhead cranes, take them out of service, lock them out, label it, tag it, so as to understand this equipment is in need of repair. Let's go to the next slide. Let's jump to, again, I'm looking at the time, rigging. Rigging is slings, chains, wire ropes. These are all the things that would be included in the 1910-184. So there's several different varieties of these. Let's go to the next one. Again, slings are, common, used with cranes, overhead lifting devices. The inspection requirements for slings is very specific. Again, they're broken out by category, but just as a rule, understand that all slings are to be inspected each day prior to their use. So again, I know I've said that even with the cranes, same thing with the slings. It's a daily inspection. Okay, but if you have a sling that you're not using today, right, you're not inspecting it if you're not using it. But it says inspected every day prior to the use. So anytime that you would use this equipment, yes, you must inspect it. And again, what are you looking for? Well, you're looking for, again, defects, any type of issue that could come about to cause this not to perform as it should. Includes chains, ropes, slings, and again, they could be synthetic, they could be nylon, natural fiber. There's all kinds of varieties of slings out there. The one that does go further than just the daily inspection, again, is a bullet point there at the bottom. It says chain slings must be inspected every 12 months. And that type of inspection is going to be much more thorough, right? Because you are going to make sure that this particular sling has not been compromised, or that it would presumably be able to last another 12 months before it is looked at again in a much more thorough way. But again, those are spelled out in 184, the Sling standard. Let's go to the next slide. The capacity, that's always a good one, because again, as a safety person, when you see someone using a sling, no matter what type it is, you want to know a few things like, okay, what is the capability or capacity of that, of the sling? And it should be clearly marked. When it's new, I'll say the labels are generally easy to read, but over time through use and, just wear and tear. Yeah, sometimes the labels tend to, become hard to read. You should always be able to read what the sling is, what its lifting capacity is, right? You can see a few examples there in the slide. And at any time, if you can't read that label, technically that sling should be taken out of service, because you can't say with some certainty what it is capable of performing. Does that make sense? So, if you've got a sling that's rated for 500 pounds, okay, well, I need to be able to read that on the tag. I can't just assume that, okay, well, you're telling me this, but how do you know that? So, but you are looking for defects in the actual sling itself. But a label is something you should be aware of as well. Let's go to the next one. As you can see, I'm trying to run, I'm speeding up here a little bit, watching the time. Some of the things to look for when you're doing your sling inspections, and again, in order to do those, you should be at least trained in what you're looking for. Companies that make slings will, they have information that will give you what it is that you would not want to see. So on the one on the left there, it looks like it's a chain, but to me it looks like somebody tied it in a knot. Have you ever seen a sling that was tied in a knot? I can tell you right now that that is probably one of the worst things you can do, because it causes that particular point to lose almost more than half of what its lifting capacity is. So same applies, for a rope, for a nylon. If you're tying it in a knot, you just basically derated the lifting capacity of that piece, that sling. So that's what you don't want to see. Take that out of service. But you're looking for, wears, cracks, knots, kinks, snags, tears. Think of those nylon slings. Those are very popular now. You always see a lot of nylon slings in the company. You're looking for those nylon slings, and when it mentions the word tears, yeah, there's a lot of nylon slings out there that have tears in them. And when they start showing that amount of deterioration, right, you're losing what would be the load rating capacity. It's not going to be able to do what it's supposed to. So you need to be pulling those out of service, right? In most cases, things like that, you just discard them. You're throwing them out, cutting them up, so that somebody can't pull it out of the garbage can and reuse it. But the one on the right shows the wire rope. Do you see how it's all deformed? The bird caging effect, right? Meaning that it was probably shock loaded. That's a bad thing as well. Let's go to the next one. The damages, right? I always tell people, if you find damage, take it out of service. Now, some of them can be repaired. I'm not saying they're all discarded, but it should be at least pulled from service. Tag it, right? Write it up. Hey, this sling is found to be defective. Contact your supervisor, you know, can you get it repaired, or is it just a replacement item? But you know, almost any company factory you walk through, I'm sure there's slings and lifting devices out there that just really, you know, have seen their life cycle long ago and they need to be pulled out of service. Let's go to the next one. Protecting. I always, you know, how do we make slings last longer? First thing you should, you know, find somewhere to store them. If they're not in use, don't throw them on the floor. You know, pick them up, put them on the wall. You know, store them off the floor on a rack where it's clean, dry. You know, so that they're not being, you know, abused. Never drag something across the floor. I know I've seen people, you know, you're wearing it out by doing that when you drag it across the floor. Some of the always hook with the closed hook arrangement. The picture on the right there shows how to pick something up, right? And that you want the hook so that it doesn't come loose. But again, slings, chains, chokers, these are all types of lifting devices. Let's go to the next one. In the OSHA standard 184 under slings, yeah, it's broken out just similar to what most other OSHA standards are, right? The ones that we've been talking about here are the inspections under paragraph D. And again, it's going to, yeah, use some of that language that talks about, you know, you're looking for defects, you're looking for kinks, tears, knots, you know, things that would be a description of what you don't want to see. But then it goes into further specific types of, you know, alloy steel chains, wire ropes, metal mesh, natural fiber ropes, yeah, synthetics. Yeah, they're, you know, they have specific categories and what you should be looking for and used appropriately. I mean, I always, I guess I have in my experience, you know, if you're working with something that's hot, yeah, you that should be something you should think of with your slings, because if your lifting sling is getting hot, that can compromise the load rating over time. I've seen people use ropes on something that was hot, and I mean they were cooking the rope. The rope was just, you know, almost it was melting. It was, you know, it was so brittle. And you know, I guess in talking to them, I'm going, you know, I think you need to reconsider what type of material you're using for your sling. And again, it's the operation, what they were doing. So always think of that, you know, application, what it is, how are we using it? Is it super cold? Is it super hot? There's probably something out there that would be appropriate. You just want to make sure that that's what you're using, and not just, you know, something you found laying on the floor. Here, put this around it, pick it up. That'll work. Okay. If you've ever seen a sling fail, a crane fail, believe me, it's very dangerous. A lot of injuries, serious injuries can occur. So inspections are important with any of this. That's what we've been talking about now for, you know, an hour. Let's go to the next one. General duty clause. And I throw this in because with some of the things that we'll look at in the next 1 or 2 slides, obviously OSHA, we look at the OSHA standards when we're trying to conduct the inspection, because this is what we are looking at to determine compliance. But the question, and if you're not familiar, what do we do if there's not an OSHA standard? And believe it or not, that happens. That's out there. So if you go back to the original OSHA Act under Section 5A1, it says, right, the employer shall furnish to each employee employment and a place of employment which is free of recognized, right? So it's saying that the company is responsible to provide that safe workplace. When we don't have an OSHA standard, This is what we will use in order to issue a citation and have the company correct what is deemed a hazard, right? So again, jump to the next slide here, and I'll give you some examples. What if I have some jack stands on the lower left here? I have jack stands that are used to hold up, I don't know, something big, and the jack stands are they have these. The picture I'm using here. These, they look like they're built at the factory, and they have labels on them. I can see it looks like it's got a pin. Look like they're pretty sturdy. But even those jack stands, there's a lift or a load capacity, right? How much will it withstand? Okay, so if you have this jack stand and all of a sudden you're using it not according to its manufacturer, overloading it, I'll say, or say it failed, it broke, and I looked at it and determined, well, yeah, I can tell you why it broke. You overloaded it. Okay, OSHA, we would say, hey, in order to fix this, we're going to issue, because I don't have an OSHA standard specific to a jack stand failure load capacity. We would issue, if we had an exposure, an employee, a 5A1 citation, but we would list as the corrective action to follow the manufacturer load rating, right? We would point to what you were doing that was not safe. So that's why I say with lifting devices or other types of devices, there may not be an OSHA standard, but we would still address that if it was an inspection through the general duty clause. This other one here, I'm just using, again, it's a bottle jack. Always check the manufacturer. The manufacturer will tell you many things, like how the equipment should be used, maybe ways that it shouldn't be used. We want to make sure that if that's what you're using in your company, that you provide that safe work environment. Let's go to the next one. I think the next one, again, just trying to throw stuff out. Auto lifts. And I only say this because I know recently we've seen an uptick, or I have, and people that have these, and I'll say they're maybe not, car repair stations, but next thing you know, the maintenance department's got an auto lift, and we're going, oh, okay, you're using this, to pick up whatever company vehicles. The one on the left is what's called a 4-post. And again, it's the one that you drive on. If you've ever been to the Jiffy Lube, your oil change, right? There's different types of auto lifts. This one, you drive onto it and it picks the whole car up with the wheels on top of on the planks. The one on the right is what's called a 2-post, and that's the one you drive. Then they got the arms that come out and it picks the car up from the body. We have found, OSHA, have found that companies, maybe because they're affordable now, companies buy these, and there's inspection requirements for this equipment. Again, treat it like you would any other lifting device, where think of making sure that it is maintained in a serviceable condition. You don't want this to fall into that category of breakdown maintenance, right? Because if you've ever seen a car, which, 2-3 tons, you got that thing in the air, and I'm going to say that the mechanic is going to be underneath working. Okay. Back to what we had said earlier about the crane. Remember the crane? We said, don't carry the load over personnel. Okay. With this type of lifting equipment, right? The personnel, they have to be under it. Now there's safety features on these types of auto lifts that have locks, which again, make sure that the locks work on your auto lift. But I just made a note, check the equipment maker for operating procedures, but also there is such a thing as the Automotive Lift Institute, the ALI. They have a good website. I know OSHA, we've gotten information from them because again, we've seen maybe an increase. There's a lot of people that have these that are not just, oil change places. So if you have one, or somebody that does, maybe make mention to them, yeah, about safety and, hey, do you inspect that on a regular basis to make sure that it's in working order and that it's being maintained, which to me would be very important. Let's go to the next item. Okay, now we've gotten through, again, with the time that we have. The rest of the slides I have are just resources. So the first one, is the OSHA website, osha.gov. If you're ever looking for something you need to know, if you can't find it, call me, shoot me an email, I'll help you. The next one, the Small Business Handbook, again, very useful document. This was actually recently updated. I think the information in there now has got language about COVID, maybe heat stress, but again, link at the very top. So if you want to look at that more closely, let's go to the next one. Next one's the training. This was from a previous session we did, I believe, back in the spring. Again, good document about OSHA, talks about training requirements. It's got the link at the top. Let's go to the next one. Pennsylvania Consultation. This is what Dave will speak to when I'm finished here in the next slide or two. Let's go. Another. Oh, and then that just talks about Dave and it's no cost. Let's go to the next one. I believe it's my information. Oh, disclaimer, last one. And questions, my email address at the bottom, and Dave, I went over by 4 minutes. So
that's pretty
does
good.
anybody have any questions?
Thanks, Mark.
Uh-huh.
And yeah, if anybody has any questions, please have them, please put them into the chat box. Okay, let me start this one. And there you go.
Oh, that's perfect. Thanks, Cindy. You go ahead and go to the next slide. All right. So thanks everybody for having me on today. What I'd like to talk about is kind of where Mark left off relative to Pennsylvania OSHA consultation, and just go over some of the information applicable to what we do at Pennsylvania OSHA consultation, and what type of services we provide, and to give you some information on how to set up a consultation if you'd like to do that. So I'd like to start off with Pennsylvania OSHA consultation. We operate out of Indiana University of Pennsylvania. So Indiana University of Pennsylvania, IUP, has an accredited safety science department. And what happens is we get through a grant funding to provide free safety and health resources to small businesses in Pennsylvania. And if you're like me, when you hear the word free, your initial thought is, yeah, right, nothing's free, somebody's paying for it. And the answer to that is it's actually Federal OSHA that provides the funding for our grant to administer this program. And then the Pennsylvania Department of Labor kicks in a percentage, and that's where our funding comes from to offer this free service to small and medium-sized businesses. And what we determined to be a small and medium-sized business through this grant is an establishment with less than 250 employees at the site and 500 corporate wide. So that's kind of who we're geared to service. A lot of the visits we do are employers that are well below both those numbers. I mean, 3, 4, 5 employees, 10 employees, and that may be the whole corporation. So we do many visits with very small businesses, but we're able to service businesses that are a little bit larger than that also. We give our priority in scheduling visits because we do have a backlog. We have a lot of people that do request the service to employers engaged in high hazardous industries, involved in specifically hazardous operations, and more so operations where there may be emphasis programs from OSHA. For example, amputations, which is going to focus on lockout, tagout, machine guarding, things like that. There's a recent emphasis that came out on heat stress. So we give those businesses higher priority, but over time, we'll get to essentially everybody out there that puts a request in. Large businesses, so businesses that may have more than 250 at the site or more than 500 at the corporate level, we'll still try to honor those requests for servicing to the best of our ability, obviously, because we're prioritizing the smaller businesses. But generally, we may be more of a limited scope, meaning we may not be able to come out and assess all your hazards, all of your compliance, but we may have to limit the scope to one particular topic, be it noise, hazard communication, powered industrial trucks, whatever that topic may be, which as the employer inviting us out, you're in control of the scope of that. So we're there to look at whatever you want us to look at, essentially. Go ahead, Cindy. So here's an example of some of the health, safety and health services we perform. On-site physical hazard evaluations. And once again, what full or limited means, hey, you could kind of say, hey, look at everything. Look at our programs, our training relative to safety and health. Let's do a walkthrough. Nothing's off the table. Look at whatever you want to look at. Or it could be limited, meaning to kind of follow Mark's presentation. Let's say, hey, you just bought this manufacturing facility. You're kind of new at getting it up, learning all this stuff, hopefully trying to get it up to speed. You may bring us out and say, hey, Dave, I think we may have quite a few issues here I'm trying to get caught up on. Can you first tell us what we need to do relative to our overhead cranes? This is new to me. Where do we need to start? So we wouldn't necessarily, we're not going to get up on the lift and take your brake cover off and inspect your drum and your wire rope and all that stuff. But what we would do is look at more of your process to say, okay, what, if anything, are you doing relative to the frequent inspections? What, if anything, are you doing relative to periodic inspections? What, if anything, you're doing relative to employee training? And then we would help you kind of navigate that from a regulatory standpoint and provide you some resources, some templates for inspection documents, templates for training. That would be an example of a limited scope visit from our standpoint. We also do industrial hygiene exposure monitoring. So, and once again, this is all for free, be it noise dosimetries, audiometry testing. We could do air sampling, so it could be welding fume analysis and things like that. Potentially evaluating your safety and health written programs. And if we note deficiencies, we have templates for those to provide to you. Training assessment and development assistance, post OSHA inspection compliance. So from time to time, a business will get an inspection from OSHA enforcement. They come to a settlement of what the final, hey, here's what the final deviations are going to be. Here's the results of the citations, the monetary impact, etc. All that gets finalized, and the business may look back, step back, and say, okay, we need to correct this stuff now. What do we need to do to correct it? I'm unsure. Well, we can come out at that point and kind of help you navigate through that. And then also safety and health management system program evaluation. So the businesses that are a little more advanced, what we could help them do is kind of navigate the whole system they have set up to manage safety, management involvement, employee involvement, hazard assessment, all that stuff. So we can provide some recommendations from that standpoint. Additionally, the offsite services we provide are daily telephone or email availability. So you can always, as an employer in Pennsylvania in the private sector, give us a call. We always have people on phone duty. Send us an email and just ask a general regulatory compliance question. Also presentations, webinars, seminars, stuff like we're doing here today. And then kind of brought on by the start of COVID, we kind of upped our game relative to virtual assessment. So some of the hazards now we're kind of able to assess virtually if it's something that really wouldn't be necessary to come on site to look at. Go ahead, Cindy. All the consultants we have come out from our program, we're all faculty in the safety science department at IUP. So we're all board certified safety and health professionals, industrial hygienists, average over 20 years experience in professional occupational safety and health. And our consultants are strategically located across Pennsylvania. So although we're all faculty at IUP in Indiana, Pennsylvania, to better service this program, we have consultants that live throughout the state. So we have faculty members in the safety science department at IUP that live in Philadelphia, that live in Meadville. So we're kind of positioned throughout the state, which kind of helps us logistically service the requests coming in a little better. Go ahead, Cindy. Any work or any request you put in for service from us, it's 100% confidential. So being a business that puts a request in that says, hey, I'd like to have you guys come out, look at my machine guarding or do some noise sampling for us. We don't share that information with anybody. So Mark does through OSHA enforcement in the Erie office, they have no access to that. So they have no idea where we go, who we work with, who puts requests in for service, what assistance they're looking for. Anything we do for you it's just between us and you. You can do whatever you want with the information, but we are prohibited legally from providing that to anybody, enforcement, lawyers pursuing liability cases. Our written reports we provide to you are protected legally from subpoenas. You do whatever you want with it. We provide the information to no one. Go ahead, Cindy. With OSHA consultation, unlike enforcement, which we're completely separate from, we issue no citations or no penalties. So you can never have us come out to help you assess a hazard or a risk and then have that turn into an OSHA citation. While you're working with us, you're actually exempt from programmed OSHA inspections. And I had mentioned earlier, we don't communicate with enforcement where we go and who we work with. So the only way they would know that is if they came out to do a programmed inspection in your facility and you're actively working with us to assess some risks, we would give you documentation. You could show them at that point to prove that you're working with us. And then once again, during that time, you're actually protected from those programmed OSHA inspections. As the employer, once again, you're actually in control of the scope of the visit. So you have to request our service. We're never just going to show up and say, hey, here we are. You have to request our service. And then once we do, you're in control of the scope of the visit as far as what we're there to look at. Now, here's the catch. Because you're protected from OSHA inspections, before we start, you have to agree that you'll correct any imminent danger hazards or serious hazards. That's the catch. You have to request for us to come out. You're to control the scope, but within that scope, if we identify a serious hazard, you have to agree to correct that before we start. And we work with the employer to set up a time frame to say, hey, once we determine what that hazard is going to be, what the recommendations are to correct, hey, how long do you think it's going to take you to correct that? And we come up with a mutually agreed upon due date to have you correct that. And then all you have to do is once you do correct that hazard, you provide us with documentation showing that hazard is corrected. We close the hazard, close your case, and move on. So go ahead to Cindy, the next slide. Just another program we do have here in Pennsylvania that I specifically work with, and I'd like to just kind of mention everyone is, you have a lot of businesses that have heard of VPP, the OSHA Voluntary Protection Program. There's also a program, a cooperative program to provide recognition for the businesses, the smaller businesses in Pennsylvania. They have exemplary safety and health programs, and it's called the SHARP program. So just like VPP, it's only designed for small business, where we do have the ability to come out, and a lot of businesses we've been working with over time have achieved this level where they're actually recognized as a SHARP site, a SHARP establishment, if they meet certain criteria, such as they score high relative to their health, safety and health management system evaluation, and they have injury and illness rates below the industry average for their NAICS code. And then we could give them recognition in this program, and then ultimately, when they participate in this program, they're actually deferred from OSHA inspection. We can go up for a period of 3 years, and then at which time we come out and reevaluate. And if they still meet the criteria, we just keep the business in the program. So I just wanted to throw that out there to kind of promote that program a little bit. Go ahead, Cindy. Now, so hopefully after, kind of going over some of the stuff, you may be interested in the program. And the next question may be, hey, where do I get some more info? There's our website. If you would like to request the consultation, circled in red there is a link to request OSHA consultation. Go ahead, Cindy. As you scroll down through our webpage, there's a couple quick videos. It's like a 3-part series there. You see part 1 on the screen now. Getting started. Hey, here's kind of what happens during the visit, and here's how we end the visit. So it's kind of a 3-part series there, going through a little bit of that info. And like I said, the real quick, short to the point videos. Next slide. And here's a few testimonials we have from businesses we've worked with in the past. Just kind of looking at the list here. A couple of these businesses are actually a couple of the SHARP sites we have. Some of them are not. And where you can kind of see a testimonial from them talking about their experience with the program and the benefits they saw in it. So, and we try to keep those videos pretty short, but to just give you a little info from other private sector businesses in PA and the experiences they had. Go ahead, Cindy. And just lastly here, I'd like to throw out another opportunity for some free safety and health services. In Pennsylvania, through the Department of Labor, they have a group that's called PATHS, And what this group does is they offer free safety and health training to businesses in Pennsylvania. So I just recommend when you get some free time, Google search their website, take a look at it. They do a lot of various topics. They're all free. And you can get online, see everything that they offer. They have training calendars out there. So you can simply look at the calendar, pick a topic, whether it's you want to go through by yourself, your safety person, the safety committee, whoever it is, and just go ahead and sign up for the topic and participate. In addition to those webinars, they also do free safety, first aid CPR training, OSHA 10-hour courses, all that stuff. So maybe just take a quick search of that website when you have an opportunity. Next slide. There's my contact info there. So if you had a question and didn't, put it in the chat feature, that's fine. You could always follow up with an email to me or a phone call. That's my cell number, so that'll go directly to me. And hopefully I'll get that question answered for you. And I just appreciate everybody participating today. And that's all I have.
Well, thank you, Mark, and thanks, Dave. A lot of great information. I again want to encourage everyone, if you have a question, now would be a great time to throw it in the chat or to unmute yourself and just mention it. Great expertise. And I know sometimes OSHA type questions can sometimes be hard because sometimes it's very specific questions, but we are excited to be able to provide these experts in such a convenient manner. And we will be sharing, again, the PowerPoints, which give you their contact information. So we encourage you to reach out to them. We all want safe working environments for our businesses, for our employees. And so that's really why we are partnering with these great organizations to make sure that that happens. Just to end, first, I just want to say thank you to Dave and Mark one more time. Secondly, I wanted to mention again that the recording for today will be sent out as soon as it processes. We'll also be sending out a survey to give you a chance to give us some feedback on today's webinar, and encourage you to, also mention what kinds of trainings you're looking for. And then, of course, we have another webinar coming up next month. So you all are on our newsletter distribution as well as our email distribution. So look for that. And if you're not registered, we encourage you to register for it. And it escapes me right now what that specific topic is. But we will have another one in November, and then I believe one in December.
November 3rd is OSHA inspections, citations, and penalties.
Thank you. So November 3rd, probably about the same time as well. So thanks, Mike. Mark, I knew you'd be right on that.
December, we got record keeping.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right. Do you want to talk a little bit about what that one would be all about?
I know we've done the one for November, that OSHA inspection previously, maybe a couple of years ago. But yeah, well, I think the PowerPoint, it starts with, what if OSHA knocks on your front door and says, I'm here to do an inspection. We would, walk through the opening conference, the walk around, the interviews. But before we finish, we do get into some questions as to, okay, well, what can you expect? And if it's a citation, all right, well, what does that mean? What rights, what responsibility, right? So we'll go through, but again, that's why I say the question is always good, because if you got a question, shout out, how much is the penalty and who do I pay that to? And yeah, those are, all things that I believe from the previous time we had that topic. And again, that's good to discuss to help people. The December with the record keeping, OSHA record keeping 1904. That's always, yeah, we do that one almost every year. And again, that talks, about recordability, but I think we throw in also about reportability, right? Like the requirement for companies to call OSHA. When does that happen? So all good topics.
Absolutely. And I'll have links to those two events in my follow-up email to everyone with the recording and with the PowerPoints. So with that, I'd like to say thank you to everyone who's joined us today. We hope you have a great day, and we will look forward to seeing you back here next month. Take care, everyone.
Bye now.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.